She slid a napkin to the Mafia boss. It said, "Next table. He kidnapped me. Don't react." The message trembled in her handwriting as her fingers released the folded paper, praying the stoic man at table 7 would understand her desperate plea. Alana Kent maintained her practiced smile as her captor, Preston Webb, returned from his phone call, his charming facade hiding the monster who had abducted her 3 days ago from her apartment building's parking garage. The elegant interior of Villa Belvento restaurant in Charlottesville offered no comfort despite its warm lighting and tasteful decor. Gregory Mercer, the feared businessman with rumored connections to organized crime, glanced at the napkin without changing his expression, his dark eyes briefly meeting Alana's before returning to his bourbon. His reputation preceded him. People avoided his table, whispered about his empire, and never dared cross him. Preston reached across the table to grasp Alana's hand, his thumb pressing painfully against her wrist as a silent warning to behave. The expensive wine in her glass remained untouched as she calculated her odds of survival, wondering if her message would be ignored like so many pleas for help before. The waiter approached with their entrees, giving Alana a momentary respite from Preston's grip as he made room for the plates. She noticed Mercer fold the napkin twice before slipping it into his suit pocket, his movements so subtle they were nearly imperceptible. Time slowed to an agonizing crawl through each course, each bite of food tasting like ash as Preston discussed his fabricated business ventures. Mercer had left 20 minutes after receiving her message, without a single glance in her direction or any sign he would intervene. At evening's end, Preston yanked Alana to her feet with excessive force, disguised as gentlemanly assistance. The staff smiled politely, blind to her predicament as they wished the lovely couple a good night, while Preston steered her toward the exit with a firm hand on her back. The parking lot offered no salvation, no sirens, no rescuers, no sign of Mercer or anyone who might have understood her silent cry for help. Preston unlocked his car and pushed Alana inside, his pleasant demeanor vanishing the moment the doors closed. "Who did you talk to?" he demanded, gripping her jaw with enough pressure to leave marks. "I saw you looking around too much in there. What did you do?" His eyes, once attractive when they first met online, now burned with paranoid rage. Alana shook her head, tears streaming down her face as she insisted she'd spoken to no one. The slap came without warning, his signet ring cutting her lip as he demanded absolute honesty while starting the engine with frightening calm. The motel he chose was 30 miles outside the city, a dilapidated place with peeling paint and flickering neon. Preston checked in using yet another false name, his collection of fake IDs testament to his preparation for this crime. Each step toward the room felt like walking toward her own grave, her hopes fading with the distance from the restaurant. She thought of the twice-folded napkin in Mercer's pocket, a message received but apparently ignored, as Preston shoved her into room 18. Surveillance cameras had been the first thing Alana noticed when entering the restaurant, wondering if anyone would review the footage and recognize her from the missing person reports. Preston had assured her no one had filed. The realization that no one might be looking for her settled like ice in her stomach. "You shouldn't have been so quiet at dinner," Preston muttered, pacing the room like a caged animal. People notice when a woman doesn't talk. They think something's wrong. His sudden concern for appearances contradicted the bruise forming on her cheekbone. Morning came with no rescue, just Preston's announcement that they would be moving again to avoid staying in one place too long. Alana nodded mechanically, her spirit crumbling as she realized the napkin had been her one chance at freedom, a chance now gone. The second motel was worse than the first, hidden from the main road and frequented by people who valued anonymity above cleanliness or safety. Preston seemed to know exactly which establishments wouldn't require proper ID or ask uncomfortable questions about Alana's increasingly disheveled appearance. 3 days had passed since the restaurant, and Alana had begun to lose track of time, her world narrowing to watching Preston's moods and anticipating his needs to avoid triggering his volatile temper. The pattern was becoming clear. Move at night, sleep during day, never stay anywhere longer than 24 hours. Preston's phone calls grew more frequent and secretive, whispered conversations in the bathroom while Alana pretended to sleep, catching fragments about merchandise and buyers that chilled her to the bone. Whatever his original plan for her had been, it seemed to be evolving into something even more sinister. The third motel room's bathroom had a loose tile behind the toilet that Alana worked free while showering, creating a small cavity where she could hide the pen she'd managed to steal from Preston's jacket. It wasn't much, but it was the first object she possessed that he didn't control. "We're going north tomorrow," Preston announced after ending another hushed phone call, studying her reaction with predatory intensity. "I have friends there who've been waiting to meet you. People who will appreciate your unique qualities more than I can alone." Alana nodded submissively while her mind raced, recognizing that north likely meant crossing state lines, a boundary that would make rescue even more improbable, and prosecution of Preston more complicated if she ever escaped. The weight of her situation crushed what little hope remained. When Preston fell into a deep sleep after drinking half a bottle of whiskey, Alana crept to the bathroom and frantically scratched partial information onto the wall behind the towel rack, the motel's name and road number. Not a complete address, but perhaps enough for someone searching specifically for her. Preston's increasing carelessness revealed patterns of previous abductions. A hotel receipt with another woman's name fell from his wallet, and his laptop browser history showed searches for trafficking networks before he snapped it shut upon noticing her glance. The realization that she wasn't his first victim intensified her determination to survive. His stories changed daily. Sometimes he claimed to be protecting her from imagined threats. Other times he spoke of their future together with delusional certainty, and occasionally he dropped the pretense entirely, coldly informing her of her monetary value to people she would soon meet. Each location felt more remote than the last, with fewer witnesses and greater isolation from potential help. Alana memorized small details of each place: unusual wallpaper patterns, distinctive bathroom fixtures, the sound of specific highway traffic, hoping against hope she might someday need to identify these places to authorities. "You should be grateful," Preston hissed after catching her looking too long at a passing police car through the motel window. "Other men would have hurt you by now. I've been patient, haven't I?" His twisted perception of kindness made her stomach turn as she forced herself to nod agreement. The fifth night brought torrential rain that drowned out all other sounds, isolating them further in a roadside cabin with no neighboring occupants. Preston seemed pleased by the weather's assistance in his efforts to keep her hidden from the world. When he stepped outside to smoke, Alana frantically searched his duffel bag, finding multiple phones, cash in various currencies, and a small notebook with dates and initials that confirmed her worst fears. She was merely the latest in a series of women who had disappeared into Preston's carefully constructed trap. The rain continued into morning, and Preston announced they would stay an extra day rather than travel in the downpour, the first break in his rigid relocation schedule. Alana feigned relief while inwardly panicking at the thought of remaining in such complete isolation for additional hours. Something changed in Preston's demeanor on the sixth day. He checked his mirrors more frequently while driving, took unexpected turns, and repeatedly assured himself aloud that they weren't being followed. Alana noticed his newfound paranoia, but dared not ask its cause, fearful of redirecting his anxiety toward her. Unbeknownst to Alana, Gregory Mercer had begun his investigation the moment he left Villa Belvento, instructing his driver to circle the block while he contacted his security team. The twice-folded napkin, his code for urgent, life-threatening situations, remained in his inner pocket as he mobilized resources without attracting attention. Mercer's first call was to Hector Walsh, his head of security and former military intelligence officer, with simple instructions: restaurant cameras tonight, all angles, especially the parking lot. No explanations were needed. Their 15 years of partnership had established an unspoken language of trust and efficiency. Within an hour, Mercer had footage of Preston helping Alana into a black sedan, the license plate captured clearly thanks to Villa Belvento's high-end security system that Mercer himself had funded during the restaurant's renovation. The owner owed him favors that required no questions when Mercer's team requested access. "Richard Fowler," Hector reported after running the plate and driver's image through several databases. "Except Richard Fowler died 3 years ago in Minnesota. This man is using stolen identities." The discovery confirmed Mercer's suspicion that this wasn't an impulsive crime, but a calculated operation. Mercer established a command center in his downtown office building's secure basement, walls soon covered with maps tracking possible routes from the restaurant and profiles of Preston's known aliases. The pattern emerged quickly: small motels paid in cash, rural locations, constant movement. Credit card transactions from the real Richard Fowler had stopped 3 years ago, but facial recognition from traffic cameras matched their suspect to 12 different identities across 5 states in the past 18 months. Each identity disappeared after approximately 1 month of use, suggesting a rotating system of false documentation. "He's done this before," Mercer concluded, studying the timeline of disappearances in regions where their suspect had been active. At least 7 women reported missing, all matching similar physical descriptions to our victim. The realization hardened his resolve. This wasn't just a rescue mission, but the dismantling of a predator's operation. Mercer deployed teams to monitor gas stations and budget motels within a 100-mile radius, focusing on establishments with minimal security and staff who wouldn't remember faces. The initial 48 hours yielded nothing, suggesting Preston had anticipated potential pursuit and chosen his route carefully. On the third day, Hector discovered the restaurant's cleaning staff had found something unusual: scratches behind a bathroom towel dispenser that hadn't been there before service that night. Mercer immediately ordered the entire bathroom dismantled, revealing Alana's desperate message with the partial address. Route 29, Blue Ridge Motor Lodge, Mercer read from the recovered writing, immediately dispatching teams to the location while he personally drove there. His usual security detail expanded to include men with specific extraction skills. The motel manager confirmed a couple matching their description had stayed, but left the previous morning. A maid at Blue Ridge remembered Alana's distinctive watch, a detail Mercer had noticed at the restaurant, and mentioned the woman had seemed unusually interested in knowing exactly where they were located. This confirmation that Alana was actively creating breadcrumbs renewed Mercer's determination to follow her trail. The breakthrough came on day 5, when a gas station attendant 70 miles north reported a man matching Preston's description, purchasing supplies with cash, appearing nervous, and checking his surroundings repeatedly. Security footage showed Alana waiting in the car, her posture defeated but her eyes alert, scanning her surroundings with purpose. Mercer's team triangulated potential locations based on the gas purchase amount and vehicle type, narrowing their search to a 15-mile radius of rural cabins and isolated motels. The heavy rainfall had forced many travelers to stop, inadvertently helping Mercer by keeping Preston stationary long enough to be located. Pinehaven Cabins, Unit 6, Hector confirmed after midnight on the 6th day, his voice betraying rare emotion. Separate units, minimal occupancy due to the storm, vehicle matching our target parked outside. The coordinates were immediately relayed to all team members as Mercer himself drove through the downpour toward the final confrontation with the man who had unknowingly challenged his authority by bringing danger into his territory. The stolen pen became Alana's most precious possession, hidden inside the hem of her sleeve when they moved and retrieved, only when Preston left her alone. In the quiet moments between his absences, she documented her journey through subtle marks that wouldn't immediately draw attention. At the 6th location, a hunting cabin with mounted deer heads that seemed to watch her every move, Alana discovered a loose floorboard beneath the bed. She tore a strip from her blouse, wrote, "Help, Preston Webb, kidnapped," with the pen, and sealed it within the floor cavity, hoping a future guest might discover her message. Preston's growing agitation manifested in constant phone checking and unusual driving patterns, doubling back on roads, taking unmarked forest paths, and parking at odd angles to monitor approaching vehicles. His previously meticulous planning showed cracks that gave Alana her first genuine sense that something had disrupted his operation. "We've been compromised," he muttered while pacing the cabin, his palm repeatedly striking the wall with increasing force. "Someone's asking questions about Richard, someone who shouldn't know that name." The revelation that his alias had been identified sent him into a spiral of paranoia. During one of Preston's longer absences, allegedly to scout their next location, Alana discovered his backup phone hidden between the mattress and box spring. Though locked, the notification preview showed a message warning about M's people asking questions downtown, confirming her suspicion that someone was indeed searching for them. Preston returned with supplies that indicated a longer stay, enough food for days, additional locks for the cabin doors, and a hunting knife he placed conspicuously on the nightstand as both tool and threat. The isolation of their location now felt like a double-edged sword. No witnesses to help her, but also fewer options for Preston to relocate quickly. Alana began feigning illness to gain more time alone, exploiting Preston's germophobic tendencies to maximize her privacy in the bathroom. During these precious moments, she scratched their location details into every hidden surface, under sink edges, behind mirror frames, between cabinet joints. The rhythmic tapping from Preston's pacing became a pattern Alana recognized. 3 steps, pause, 4 steps, longer pause, unintentionally revealing his mounting anxiety as hours passed. Each nervous tick and agitated sigh confirmed that whatever system had previously protected him was now failing. On the 7th night, headlights briefly illuminated the cabin windows before quickly disappearing down the adjacent forest road. Preston froze mid-sentence, his hand instinctively reaching for the knife as he ordered Alana to the floor and extinguished all lights, his breathing shallow and irregular with barely contained panic. "We leave at dawn," he whispered after 20 tense minutes of silence, stuffing belongings into his duffel with uncharacteristic disorganization. "Someone knows we're here. We need a new location immediately." His formerly methodical approach had devolved into reactive fear. Alana nodded obediently while surreptitiously loosening the bathroom window's frame, creating a minor structural weakness that wouldn't be immediately visible. Each small act of resistance felt like reclaiming fragments of her agency, despite the seemingly hopeless circumstances. During the night, Preston's fitful sleep was interrupted by nightmares that caused him to cry out names. Ashley, Bethany, Joanne, women unknown to Alana but whose terror she now shared. The inadvertent confessions confirmed her suspicions about previous victims and strengthened her determination to end his predatory cycle. Morning brought unexpected fog that delayed their departure, forcing Preston to repeatedly consult weather reports on his phone. Alana noticed his battery draining quickly from constant use, a small vulnerability she filed away as potentially useful information. While Preston loaded the car, Alana quickly scrawled their next destination, overheard during his recent call, on a scrap of paper tucked into the cabin's guest book. The act felt simultaneously futile and necessary, another breadcrumb that might guide whoever was following their trail. As they drove away from the cabin, Alana committed every landmark to memory: the distinctive split oak at the property entrance, the faded blue mailbox at the first intersection, the broken guardrail at the highway junction, creating a mental map she hoped would someday lead authorities back to her evidence. Gregory Mercer's methodical approach contrasted sharply with Preston's deteriorating composure, where one man spiraled into paranoia, the other constructed a precise web of surveillance and intelligence. Mercer activated contacts at every fuel station within 50 miles of their last confirmed location, creating a network of watchful eyes. The Pine Haven cabins proved a near miss. Preston and Alana had departed just hours before Mercer's team arrived, but the cabin yielded crucial evidence. The hidden message beneath the floorboard confirmed they were pursuing the right target and provided his full name, allowing for more specific database searches. "Preston Webb exists in fragments," Hector reported, compiling records across multiple states. Former military with dishonorable discharge, domestic violence complaints that mysteriously disappeared, short-term employment at transportation companies with access to travel records. The profile of their adversary grew clearer and more disturbing. Highway patrol cameras captured the sedan traveling northward at dawn, though Preston had removed the license plates, demonstrating his awareness of tracking methods. However, the vehicle's distinctive dent in the rear bumper, not present in earlier footage, provided a new identification marker for Mercer's search teams. At a rural diner 50 miles from Pine Haven, a waitress recalled serving a couple matching their description, mentioning the woman had accidentally dropped her fork twice and seemed to linger in the bathroom longer than necessary. Mercer's team discovered Route 40 Motel scratched inside the paper towel dispenser, another breadcrumb from Alana. While Preston believed himself hunted by anonymous forces, Mercer systematically assembled his prey's history. Military records revealed specialized training in evasion techniques but dishonorable discharge for psychological unsuitability, explaining both his capability for prolonged evasion and his deteriorating decision-making under pressure. The tactical advantage shifted further when Preston's phone pinged a tower near Route 40, confirming Alana's bathroom message and narrowing the search perimeter. Mercer deployed teams to every accommodation along a 30-mile stretch, instructing them to remain invisible while gathering intelligence. "Motion sensors detected at the property line," Hector warned, as Mercer's vehicle approached the hunting cabin Preston had recently vacated. "He's setting rudimentary alarms now, getting desperate." The increasing precautions indicated Preston sensed the narrowing circle but couldn't identify his pursuers. The guest book yielded Alana's final message: Lakeside Motor Court, a location just 15 miles from their current position, and notorious for accommodating clients seeking anonymity. Mercer immediately redirected his convoy, while instructing advance teams to establish a perimeter without alerting the motel staff. Night had fallen by the time surveillance confirmed Preston's vehicle parked behind Unit 12, curtains drawn tight with occasional shadows moving across them. Thermal imaging revealed 2 heat signatures inside, one stationary on the bed, the other pacing erratically by the window. "He's watching for followers," Mercer observed, noting the regular pattern of Preston checking the parking lot. "But he's only watching the front approach. He hasn't secured the rear access. This oversight would provide the entry point for the extraction team, who moved into position with practiced silence. The extraction plan prioritized Alana's safety above all else. No sirens, no announcements, no opportunity for Preston to use her as leverage or cause harm in a final desperate act. Mercer would enter first, against Hector's protests, unwilling to delegate the responsibility he had accepted when he pocketed her napkin plea. Rain began falling again as midnight approached, providing additional sound cover for the team's movements. Mercer silently thanked whatever cosmic force had arranged this meteorological assistance as he positioned himself at the rear door of Unit 12, listening for movement inside. The extraction team synchronized watches and communication devices, each member assigned specific roles: perimeter security, vehicle disablement, medical support, and primary intervention. They moved with the coordinated precision of extensive training, positioning themselves for simultaneous action from multiple approach vectors. At precisely 1:17 a.m., with Preston briefly visible through a crack in the curtains as he checked his phone, Mercer gave the signal to begin the operation that would either save Alana Kent or confirm their 7-day pursuit had ended in failure. Inside Unit 12 of the Lakeside Motor Court, Alana lay motionless on the bed, her wrists raw from the zip ties Preston had applied after catching her attempting to signal a passing truck driver earlier that afternoon. The plastic restraints bit deeper with each subtle movement, a constant reminder of her failed escape. "You ungrateful bitch!" Preston had snarled while binding her hands, his previously calculated demeanor completely abandoned. "After everything I've done to keep you comfortable, this is how you repay me?" The mask of charm had completely dissolved, revealing the predator beneath who now paced like a caged animal. Alana's split lip had stopped bleeding, but her right eye had swollen nearly shut from the backhand that followed her escape attempt. Preston had never struck her face before, always careful to leave no visible marks, but his deteriorating control had shattered that restraint along with her last cell phone, the pieces scattered across the bathroom floor. The tears had stopped hours ago, giving way to a strange calm that felt almost like acceptance, but was actually something far more dangerous: the quiet resolve of someone with nothing left to lose. Preston misinterpreted her silence as submission, unaware that Alana was mentally cataloging every object in the room as a potential weapon. Each time headlights swept across the parking lot, Preston rushed to the window, his agitation growing with every passing vehicle. "They're circling us," he muttered, though Alana couldn't determine if the "they" existed outside his increasingly paranoid imagination or represented actual pursuers. The motel room's thin walls transmitted sounds from adjacent units: a television playing too loudly, a couple arguing, ice machines humming, creating an incongruous soundtrack to what Alana believed might be her final hours. She found bitter irony in dying surrounded by people just feet away who had no idea of her predicament. Preston's pacing increased in speed and irregularity as midnight approached, his route around the room becoming less predictable as he checked windows, tested door locks, and repeatedly counted their dwindling cash. The organized criminal who had methodically abducted her now resembled a cornered animal sensing approaching hunters. "We should never have gone to that restaurant," he hissed, yanking the curtain aside for the 100th time to scan the parking lot. "Something changed that night. Someone noticed you." The irony that her desperate message had apparently succeeded offered little comfort as Preston's unpredictability reached dangerous levels. The rainfall intensified around 1 a.m., drowning out ambient sounds and further fraying Preston's nerves as visibility diminished. He paced with increasing agitation, occasionally pressing his ear against the walls as though expecting to hear approaching footsteps through the downpour. Alana focused on controlling her breathing, conserving energy, and maintaining awareness despite exhaustion and pain. The strange clarity that comes from accepting one's mortality sharpened her senses. She heard the subtle click of the rear doorknob turning before Preston noticed, the sound nearly imperceptible beneath the rain. Preston froze mid-step when the door swung open without warning, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the night. No words were spoken as Gregory Mercer stepped into the room, water dripping from his overcoat, his expression impassive as he assessed the situation with calculating eyes. "Who the fuck?" Preston's question died as he recognized the man from the restaurant, realization dawning that the powerful stranger had not ignored Alana's plea, but had instead orchestrated an elaborate hunt. His hand moved toward the nightstand where his knife lay. Mercer's subtle headshake stopped Preston's movement, as 4 additional men entered silently through both doors, their presence communicating what words could not. This confrontation had only one possible outcome, and resistance would only determine how painful that outcome would be. 7 days. Mercer finally spoke, his voice unexpectedly gentle despite the implicit threat of his presence. 7 days to find you because you thought you could take someone from my city. The simple statement carried the weight of an immutable law, a boundary crossed that could not be uncrossed. As Mercer approached the bed where Alana lay bound, Preston lunged for the knife in a final desperate act, only to find himself restrained by 2 men who materialized at his sides with practiced efficiency, subduing him with such silent precision that it seemed choreographed. Mercer cut Alana's restraints with a small pocket knife, his movements deliberate and careful to avoid causing additional pain to her abraded wrists. No words passed between them, as he gently helped her sit upright, maintaining a respectful distance that acknowledged her need for space after days of forced proximity to her captor. The rain continued its steady rhythm outside as Mercer removed his charcoal overcoat and placed it around Alana's shoulders, the garment still warm from his body heat but not intrusive, an offering of dignity rather than forced assistance. Behind them, Preston's muffled protests were silenced by one of Mercer's men with clinical efficiency. "Medical team is ready," reported a woman who entered carrying a professional-grade first aid kit, her approach to Alana measured and telegraphed to avoid startling her. "The perimeter is secure, and transportation is in position at the rear exit." The team operated with the precision of extensive practice, though Alana sensed this particular rescue held special significance. Alana flinched when the medic attempted to examine her injuries, the instinctive reaction causing Mercer to raise his hand slightly, immediately halting all movement in the room. "Only with your permission," he stated simply, establishing her authority over her own body for the first time in 7 days. The team waited silently for Alana's nod before continuing their assessment, documenting her injuries with photographs and notes that would later serve as evidence. Preston watched with dawning horror as he realized these weren't vigilantes, but professionals building a case that would systematically dismantle his freedom. "We found the others," Mercer informed Preston, his tone conversational, yet chilling in its certainty. "Ashley Henderson from Roanoke, Bethany Collins from Durham, Joanne Westfield from Richmond. They're waiting to testify." The names from Preston's nightmares were real women who had survived and remembered. Preston's face drained of color as he processed that his previous victims had been located and were cooperating with authorities. His carefully constructed predatory pattern was not just interrupted, but completely exposed. The realization that his future held accountability, rather than escape, registered in his eyes as genuine fear for the first time. "Is there anything you need from this room?" Mercer asked Alana, his question acknowledging that despite her captivity, she might have created connections to objects or hidden messages she wanted retrieved. The consideration surprised her, a recognition of her agency even in the smallest details. Alana pointed to the bathroom tile where she'd hidden the pen, her small act of resistance that now served as evidence of her determination to survive. Mercer nodded to one of his team who carefully extracted and bagged the item, treating it with the reverence of a crucial piece of evidence rather than a disposable object. "The police have been provided everything except your direct testimony," Mercer explained, as the medic finished bandaging Alana's wrists. "My team has tracked his pattern across 5 states, identified previous victims, and documented financial transactions connected to trafficking networks. Your statement will be the final piece." As they prepared to leave the motel room, Alana hesitated at the threshold, 7 days of captivity making the simple act of walking through a door without permission feel foreign. Mercer waited patiently, neither urging nor restricting her movement, allowing her to reclaim the basic freedom of choosing when to step outside. The night air carried the clean scent of rain-washed asphalt as Alana took her first unaccompanied steps toward the waiting vehicle, each footfall reinforcing her transition from victim to survivor. Behind them, a separate team collected Preston with efficient movements that suggested his journey would be considerably less comfortable. "How did you find me?" Alana asked as she settled into the back seat of a luxury sedan with tinted windows, her voice raspy from disuse and dehydration. The question contained multitudes. Why did you bother? How did you know? What made you care enough to search for a stranger? Mercer considered her question as the vehicle pulled away from the lakeside motor court. His response measured not from calculation, but from honesty. "I didn't ignore your message. I just needed time to find you properly," he explained, respecting her enough to offer the unvarnished truth rather than comforting platitudes. The convoy traveled in silence for several miles, the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers providing the only soundtrack to Alana's contemplation of freedom, a concept that had seemed increasingly abstract during her captivity. but now materialized with each mile of distance from Preston Webb. Dawn broke as they reached the outskirts of Charlottesville, the convoy bypassing the city center to approach a gated estate nestled among old-growth trees. Security personnel nodded respectfully as Mercer's vehicle passed, the property's isolation offering both protection and privacy during Alana's recovery. "This is one of my guest houses," Mercer explained as they approached a stone cottage set apart from the main residence. "Medical staff, security, and legal counsel are available, but no one will enter without your explicit permission." The boundaries were established immediately. This space was hers to control. The interior of the cottage surprised Alana with its warmth and lack of ostentation. Comfortable furniture arranged for function rather than display, a fully stocked kitchen, and windows overlooking a small private garden. The space had been prepared with consideration for someone requiring both security and healing. "Your family has been notified that you're safe, but provided no details about your location or experience," Mercer informed her as a female staff member quietly delivered a suitcase containing new clothing in Alana's size. "Those communications remain entirely your decision when you're ready." Alana approached the bathroom with trepidation. 7 days of conditioned fear, making private spaces feel dangerous rather than safe. The simple act of closing a door without someone watching created a surge of emotion she hadn't anticipated, grief and relief colliding in unexpected ways. The cottage had been stocked with essentials that demonstrated an understanding of trauma recovery: lavender-scented bath products known for calming effects, loose clothing without restrictive elements, and multiple nightlights strategically placed to eliminate dark corners. These thoughtful preparations suggested Mercer had assisted others in similar circumstances. A small leather-bound journal sat on the bedside table with a handwritten note, "For when words need a safe place." The blank pages offered a private sanctuary for thoughts Alana wasn't ready to share, memories, nightmares, and fragments of her experience that existed beyond verbal expression but required acknowledgement for healing. Outside, a discreet security perimeter maintained protective distance, visible enough to reassure but positioned to avoid triggering surveillance anxiety. The guards rotated positions in patterns designed to prevent predictability, while ensuring comprehensive coverage, their presence a shield rather than a confinement. Food had been prepared with consideration for depleted nutrition and potential appetite issues. Simple, nutrient-dense options in small portions that wouldn't overwhelm a system accustomed to restriction. A nutritionist would later explain this was part of a comprehensive recovery protocol addressing both psychological and physiological needs. The mirror revealed a stranger, hollowed eyes, bruised skin, and a wariness that hadn't existed before Preston Webb entered her life. Alana studied her reflection with clinical detachment, cataloging the visible changes while acknowledging the invisible ones would take longer to identify and address. When she emerged from the bathroom wearing clean clothes, Mercer stood respectfully near the exit, maintaining the distance that had characterized their interactions. "My number is programmed into the house phone," he explained, placing a small business card on the entryway table before turning to leave. "Why did you help me?" Alana asked, the question that had circled her thoughts since the rescue finally finding voice. "You don't know me. There was no reason for you to care about that napkin." The randomness of her salvation seemed almost as arbitrary as her abduction, though with opposite intent. Mercer paused, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved, rather than dismissing it with platitudes. "The restaurant is in my territory," he finally answered, the simple statement revealing a complex code of responsibility and protection that defined his understanding of power. "Preston will never approach you again," Mercer assured her, the statement carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "The evidence we've gathered ensures his imprisonment, and my reputation ensures his associates won't continue his work." The protection extended beyond the immediate threat to the broader network that had enabled Preston's crimes. Sleep came unexpectedly as Alana lay on the cottage's bed, her body surrendering to exhaustion, now that vigilance was no longer required for survival. The dreamless rest lasted 14 hours, her system resetting after days of hyper-awareness and fear, healing beginning in the quiet safety of unconsciousness. Alana woke to find a sealed envelope on the nightstand beside a tray of simple food, the paper thick and expensive beneath her fingers as she broke the wax seal. The handwritten note inside contained just 4 lines. "You don't need to run anymore. Your strength created the breadcrumbs that led us to you. The rest of your story belongs to you alone. GM." The implied permission to reclaim her narrative without obligation to her rescuer brought unexpected tears. The acknowledgement of her agency even during captivity validating her small acts of resistance that had helped create her path to freedom. Preston had tried to reduce her to property, while Mercer recognized her as architect of her own salvation. As days passed, Alana gradually reconnected with the world, first through carefully screened phone calls to family, then meetings with detectives and prosecutors who treated her testimony with respect rather than sensation. The legal machinery moved with unexpected efficiency, suggesting Mercer's influence extended through official channels as well. 1 week after her rescue, Alana sat in the cottage garden watching butterflies navigate between flowering plants, their delicate movements emblematic of her own fragile return to normalcy. The psychological evaluation provided by Mercer's medical team had been compassionate but honest. Recovery would be a marathon, not a sprint. The preliminary hearing occurred exactly 1 month after Alana's rescue, her testimony delivered via closed-circuit television to spare her direct contact with Preston Webb. The prosecutor had prepared her thoroughly, but nothing could diminish the power of hearing Preston plead not guilty, despite the mountain of evidence against him. 6 previous victims have agreed to testify, the district attorney informed Alana after the hearing, her expression reflecting genuine respect. Your documentation, the pen, the notes, the breadcrumbs you left, connected cases across jurisdictional lines that might never have been linked otherwise. The safe house had become a sanctuary during Alana's recovery, the boundaries and security allowing her traumatized system to gradually recalibrate. She found herself observing small daily victories, sleeping through the night, walking alone in the garden, answering the phone without fear, each representing a piece of herself reclaimed from Preston's control. 3 months passed before Alana felt ready to return to her own apartment, though she accepted Mercer's offer to upgrade her security system and relocate to a building with enhanced safety measures. The balance between independence and protection remained delicate, her autonomy precious but her safety non-negotiable. Mercer maintained professional distance throughout her recovery, respecting boundaries while ensuring she had access to resources, legal counsel, trauma specialists, financial support during work absence, and security personnel during court appearances. His assistance came without conditions or expectations of gratitude or debt. Alana found unexpected purpose in working with advocacy groups for trafficking survivors, her experience informing prevention education and recovery support systems. The psychological scars remained, but redirecting her trauma toward helping others provided a framework for processing her own healing journey. The napkin that had initiated her rescue remained preserved in an evidence locker, but its message had evolved from desperate plea to powerful symbol within Alana's recovery narrative. She incorporated its imagery into the Foundation's logo, a folded triangle representing both distress signal and hidden strength. Forensic analysis of Preston's electronic devices revealed communications with a network spanning 3 countries, his operation merely a single node in a larger trafficking infrastructure. International law enforcement partnerships, quietly facilitated by Mercer's connections, dismantled key organizational structures using evidence trails Alana's case had exposed. Alana developed a subtle communication system for public spaces, a discrete hand signal and code phrase taught to service workers, transportation providers, and medical personnel through training programs funded by her foundation. The protocol had already identified 17 potential trafficking situations in its first 6 months of implementation. The psychological fortress Preston had constructed through isolation crumbled further with each survivor connection Alana established, women with shared experiences forming a support network that transformed individual trauma into collective strength. Their group therapy sessions evolved from processing victimization to reclaiming personal agency and future aspirations. Preston Webb's trial made national headlines, the methodical presentation of evidence from multiple jurisdictions revealing a pattern of predation spanning years. Alana watched from the back of the courtroom as 7 women, including herself, testified to his escalating violence and sophisticated trafficking network. The verdict, guilty on 37 counts with a sentence of life without parole, provided closure without healing, justice without restoration. Alana recognized the complexity of her emotions as the judge pronounced sentencing, relief intermingled with grief for the person she had been before Preston entered her life. 6 months after the rescue, Alana returned to Villa Belvento for the first time, her therapist supporting the controlled exposure as part of her recovery process. Gregory Mercer sat at his usual table, acknowledging her with the subtle nod that had begun their unexpected connection that February night. Their conversation over dinner remained surprisingly ordinary. Current events, books they'd read, the restaurant's renowned tiramisu. the deliberate normalcy itself, a form of respect. Mercer treated her as neither fragile victim nor heroic survivor, but simply as Alana Kent, a person worthy of normal human interaction. "I never properly thanked you," Alana noted as they finished their coffee, the statement hanging between them with the weight of everything left unspoken. The debt seemed immeasurable, yet Mercer had never once acted as though she owed him anything. Not gratitude, not attention, not even this dinner. Mercer considered her words with the thoughtfulness she had come to recognize as his defining characteristic, measuring responses against an internal code that prioritized truth over comfort. "You never needed to," he finally replied. "Your napkin asked for help, not salvation. You saved yourself by refusing to disappear." The realization that Mercer viewed her as collaborator rather than rescued object shifted something fundamental in Alana's perspective of her ordeal. Her actions, the stolen pen, the hidden messages, the strategic breadcrumbs, hadn't been futile acts of desperation, but essential components of her own liberation. 1 year after her abduction, Alana established a foundation providing emergency response services for trafficking victims, security consultants, trauma specialists, and legal advocates available within hours of identification or escape. The organization's anonymous primary donor remained unacknowledged at his insistence, his support conditional only on effective service delivery rather than public recognition. Alana's journey from victim to survivor to advocate transformed her understanding of power, from something taken by force to something built through connection, from control over others to responsibility toward them. The napkin passed to a stranger had created a bridge between two worlds that continued to transform both. Thank you all for following this powerful story of survival and silent courage. If you've been moved by Alana's journey from captivity to freedom, please write in the comments where you're watching from around the world. Your support means everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so we can continue bringing these important stories to light. Remember, sometimes the quietest plea for help can lead to the most powerful rescue.